Lisa Henderson. I'm the Deputy News Editor for IQ, which, if you don't know, is the leading trade publication for the international live music business. I also work on ILMC and Futures Forum, which some of you may have heard of. I'm here with three very esteemed panelists who you may already recognise, but I am going to get them to introduce themselves and a bit about their work.
All right. Hi everyone. I'm Flo from Melt Festival Good Life, working as stated for Melt Festival, but also in the touring department at our company and leading the electronic department there.
Thanks, Flo.
I'm Paul Cheetham. I'm a freelancer living in Berlin. My background is in concert promotion. I'm currently working for an online concert streaming company, a platform, which is something new for me and something interesting. But yeah, my background is in live music.
Hi, I'm Julia Gutzand, and I work at Live Nation, and I book Lollapalooza Berlin, and I also book a Romanian festival called Untold, so I mainly work with major pop festivals.
Great, thanks all for coming today, and thank you for being here. So, the age of the blockbuster tour is upon us. In the first 6 months of 2023, Taylor Swift, Bruce Springsteen, Harry Styles, Elton John and Ed Sheeran all grossed more than 100 million with their tours. And in the second half of the year, we're seeing similar figures from Coldplay, Beyoncé and The Weeknd. Unprecedented figures. And today we're going to talk about how this upsurge in touring, particularly arena and stadium shows, is impacting festivals. So I wanted to open the panel by kind of asking about your own experiences in your own work of this issue. Have you seen the touring boom impact Melt Festival, Florian?
I'm louder now. Yeah, definitely. I mean, the thing for Melt Festival in comparison to the other festivals is we are not a 80,000 people festival. So I would say with the new concept that we went to, which is like going a bit away from all the headline-driven booking, it's a bit easier for me to say, okay, touring can work very well next to festivals, but I definitely see the issue of me not being able to get some artists at that level for the festival anymore. So actually working in the electronic music, which is definitely having like a very good momentum at the moment. So acts like Fred Again that we are promoting, for example, who is filling these stadiums now as well, had his first play at Melt Festival a couple of years ago. So I would say like I feel it on the one side, but on the other side it's like still a festival like Melt is a very good stepping stone coming from festivals into the live market. Yeah. So I'm very biased on that.
So when you say you feel it, at what level? Is it purely a headliner level that you're being impacted by the touring boom, or are you finding it difficult to secure acts further down the bill as well?
I would say for me, in my opinion, it's definitely the A-level headline billing. So the artists around it, they still see these festivals like Melt Festival as a benefit for them, of like, okay, getting a broader audience and being around a lot of other artists that they want to be seen with. So in these regions, I not feel it that much, unless you have these other big festivals on the same weekend. Like the last 2 years, for example, we decided to add our dates to June, which was the Primavera weekend. And this year, Primavera decided to do 3 festivals instead of 1, in Madrid and Porto as well. So a lot of festival acts that I wanted to have at the festival, who work at both festivals, didn't have the option to come back to Germany. So I definitely felt that with the mid-size acts as well. That is why we decided to go back to July next year, which happens to be the best choice now, I think.
This is something we were just talking about, Julia, about festivals talking to each other. Is that still happening? So when you say Primavera was on the same weekend, so you couldn't get some acts, like, are you talking to each other, festivals, about what acts you're going to get, and is there any kind of compromise that you can reach, or?
Yeah, I mean, Flo and I talk a lot, but we're ex-colleagues and friends as well. So, festivals talk a lot to each other, and especially, I mean, we're part of the Live Nation conglomerate, and Live Nation promotes a lot of festivals. So, we actually do talk to each other and try to help each other out. Yes.
And Paul, you come from an interesting perspective with this because now you're working in streaming. Are you seeing the impact of how is this affecting your business? Yeah,
a different angle actually. We're getting approached by a lot of artists that can't afford to tour. So that's not really to do with the boom. It probably is, but it's all the other aspects. It's the cost of touring. So, you know, good mid-level artists that can't afford to tour America, for example, or they're having to stay closer to home, who are coming to us and asking if we can stream a kind of 4,000 capacity London show or an arena show in Copenhagen to their fans in Asia because they can't afford to tour there. So they're just thinking about it a little bit differently in how they can include a stream, not as a replacement, but as something for now, just until they can get to the physical aspect of it. And this sometimes works, it sometimes doesn't. It's a very different way of working than it is from being a physical concert promoter. Lots of different things to think about. But it's worrying when you see artists that say they can't, that it's not feasible or viable to tour. That's a quite worrying situation.
And when I can add something to that, that is so funny because we say touring is booming, but every agent I'm speaking to at the moment who like sells out all these shows is telling me the artist is losing money.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to ask the question, who is it that's saying it's booming? Yes. It seems to be like the CEOs of the big companies that are doing very well. You know, they think it's a boom. I don't hear anyone from grassroots level calling anything a boom. They're just trying to survive. And there's a huge in-between, isn't there? And even the in-between seems to be suffering quite a lot for many reasons. It's not just one reason. This is such a simple question to a very complicated, multifaceted scenario, isn't it, where so many other factors come in.
Yeah,
so
exactly. That was my first question. When I looked at the title of this panel, is the touring boom hurting festivals? My first two questions are, what is the touring boom? What level of artists? And what kinds of festivals are we talking about? And what level of festivals? Because I think what we're really talking about here is A-listers touring and major festivals, because it depends on the genre, on the market, on the level of act you're booking. There are so many variables to this, but I think what we're talking about here today is the A-listers. Obviously, Florian Melt has a particular genre of artists come through, like electronic kind of artists. So I guess you're not as impacted as much if Taylor Swift and Ed Sheeran are touring, you know, because that's not the kind of act you're looking at anyway.
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, like, we're not purely electronic music festival. Like, we name ourselves as very open and diverse when it comes to music genres. But yeah, definitely, I mean, like, the electronic music scene in general is like not that much represented on the crossover festivals, or at least not the kind of electronic music that we have at our festival. So I guess that no, like, it doesn't affect me as much as the bigger festivals. Yeah.
Who do we think are the biggest victims of the touring boom? What kinds of festivals do we think are the biggest victims?
I think that question is posed very negatively. I don't think that I wouldn't say they're really victims of the touring boom, because like, I have a little bit of a different opinion, because I don't really think that the touring boom is hurting festivals, but it's building up more headliners for the future. Like, if people buy more tickets to shows, like, and artists can play bigger venues, then I have a wider selection of headliners in the future. So I wouldn't really say it hurts major festivals that much. Like, if you look at next year and look at the headliners that are around for major festivals, I would say there's quite a good selection of artists. Like Lana Del Rey just got announced to Reading and Leeds. Fred again got announced to Reading and Leeds. Blink-182, Liam Gallagher. I think that's a really good selection. I mean, so I wouldn't say it's really hurting the festivals, like the major festivals at least, that a lot of artists are going on tour. Of course, during COVID they couldn't tour, so they wanted to play their headline shows, but it's not like they're not playing festivals anymore.
I have heard a couple of European festival bosses talk about difficulty getting headliners, and some of them will only talk about it off record, but Downloads' Andy Copping talked to NME the other day about how many acts he had to approach for the headline slots, and he said it was the hardest year ever to get headliners. But then my question is about artist development. If a festival organizer is at the point where they have to look around and they're scrapping for headliners, have they done enough to develop headliners themselves? Like, is it time now that we boost up the next level of artist?
If I may, I think like that's very hard these days, like to build headliners, because the music industry is going so fast. I mean, like with Spotify and like artists like blowing up, like Fred again is an example. An artist can be like that because of one, let's say, TikTok hit, but then 3 months later, no one cares about the artist anymore. So I think like the whole approach of like how to book a festival, I think like needs to be rethought a bit, because what I also think, like, of course, yeah, we have a lot of headliners, potential headliners around still, but then again, I think most of the big festivals, and this is also a problem because the agents want all the offers in, like to say, okay, I played this and this and this festival, but then the lineups look nearly the same.
Yeah.
So I think like the festivals itself like need to think about like how to program a festival a bit more, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know, like that's what I'm thinking.
I actually think that festivals, like the festivals I work with, are doing enough to build up future headliners, because like for example, at Lollapalooza we have Weingarten Stage, which is dedicated to like female and non-binary new artists, and to giving them a stage at the big festival, and also giving them promotion time in our marketing campaign. And for example, Superbloom Festival from Good Life does the same thing. They have a stage called Neo Stage, where they have a cooperation with Pulse, with the radio station in Munich. So I think like most of the festivals I know are really trying to build up future headliners. And like Lollapalooza, we gave Nina Chuba a chance to play the festival before she got big, also Paula Hartmann, and all these kinds of artists that developed into, or are developing into, future headliners in Germany. So I think we're trying our best to really develop artists. And I mean, Melt Festival is doing the same, obviously, has done the same for years.
It's a good opportunity for artist development. It's very important that festivals have that role. But there's a difference between doing it because it's part of your strategy and part of your own brand building, and it's different to being forced to do it, because you become desperate, you'll make mistakes, you'll fast track artists before they're ready, and that won't help anyone. But yeah, it's a good opportunity to try. I remember after 9/11, we had like a couple of years where American artists were not coming over for festivals. They were not touring so much. And that proved to be a real breakthrough for domestic artists. I was working in Scandinavia, and artists like him and Nightwish were headlining festivals for the first time, and Finnish bands never headlined festivals. And that had a huge impact on them in terms of being a domestic artist, but also with their international career. They became very big international artists from that. So you can see, as Julia just said as well, it really helps the domestic artists. And the stronger you are as a domestic market, the better your festivals can operate on an international level. Because let's face it, international festivals in Germany are competing with festivals in the UK, festivals in Scandinavia for the same artists, similar time frames. So it's a good point.
what you just said kind of reminds me of what happened during the pandemic, where festivals that did take place just ended up having fully domestic bills and developing those artists. So I think whenever there's a time that appears to be challenging for the music industry, there's always so many opportunities that come from it.
It has to be authentic, and you have to be careful, because the higher up the bill the artist goes, the more money the agent will want. He'll still want the headliner fee, I guess, right? So there could be some kind of... you've got to be clever with that.
Yeah, let's talk about artist fees, because I think when I think about why an A-list star would pick touring over festivals, I mean, one of the obvious answers is the money, right? So how are festivals to contend with that, if at all?
Can you repeat the question?
Artist fees. Yeah. Obviously, an artist makes more money from touring than they would for festival appearances. Is that true?
I wouldn't agree.
Okay, interesting. So why might an A-list artist pick touring over doing the festival circuit?
I mean, obviously because the focus is on them. Like, that's why they like to have their headline shows, because everybody at the show is just coming there to see them. And also, I mean, they get a longer sound check, they get their own production, they don't have to share the stage. Of course, that's a little bit nicer than playing at a festival and sharing the stage with like 10 other artists and like not being able to have your full production and stuff like that. And I mean, for some artists, it's really hard to play festivals because they have such a big production, especially if they're not a headliner. But I mean, they put on special festival shows for that, like they're aware of that before the festival. And I think like the advantages of playing a festival is that they can recruit a new crowd, like they can get new fans and they can get even bigger, especially if you're in the middle field, if you're an artist that is like not super famous yet, you can get new fans through a festival and you get the promo from the festival, and you're on the festival poster with these big other artists, and people who've never heard of you might see your show.
Yeah, I agree with that. I was looking, an artist like Pink is a good example. Her show is so conceptual. Yeah. It's all about her. The production is very specific to her show. Would be very difficult to do that at a festival. I'm sure it's possible, but... It
is possible. She played Sigurd Festival a couple of years ago, and I talked to the booker from Sigurd about it the other day, sorry. No, but she said it was possible. It was quite difficult because she flew over the crowd, but they did it. I mean, and she said it was an amazing show.
Well, that was part of my point. After doing the festival, she decided her own shows were probably the way to go. That it worked at the festival, but there were way too many stakeholders. And now she can play whatever stadium she wants, do the show she wants, and she seems to be doing that every year.
Yeah, I mean, like another example with like getting a new crowd with heritage bands. I mean, like we saw that with Nelly Furtado, for example, now. Like I think like who started playing at a festival in Australia 2 years ago again. And now like she got a completely new generation of kids, like the trance electronic kids, like both love them as well as like the older audience. So definitely helped through the festival as well.
And I guess another way of looking at this, it's not impossible for the artist to do both things. You know, do their own stadium or arena show for a new album, and a year later play the same market at a festival once the album cycle is over. Then it all kind of makes sense, everyone benefits. That's kind of something I think artists might do.
Yeah, I mean, Ed Sheeran's a great example of this. His tour next year, stadium tour, but is still doing festivals throughout. And he's actually visiting a festival that I'd never heard of, Stavern Festival in Norway. And he played that 10 years ago, and now he's coming back next year. And it feels like a kind of a thank you to the festival that helped develop him 10 years ago and that booked him. So I think that's a really nice example. But actually, when I was talking about this to someone earlier, they said Ed Sheeran's a unique act because he doesn't need to bring production with him. He can stand there and he's got his voice and a guitar and he'll hold the crowd. So yeah, that's interesting. So if, as you say, artists can and do both tours and festivals, then let's look at the fans. Do they have enough money to attend both? What are we seeing in the market right now?
I mean, I would say they do, because we see a rise in ticket sales, and we, like for Live Nation, ticket sales have been up for, I think, 20%, a little bit over 20% over the last year. So I think like people are starting to spend more money on live music events again. So, and I think it takes up a bigger chunk of their life. And so I think they actually can, because that's what they do at the moment. They spend more money on music, on live music.
But we are seeing festivals that are not doing so well with ticket sales, and we are hearing executives talk about money being taken out of the market by big tours. And obviously, being part of Live Nation, maybe that's something that's not seen as much. But is it possible that is happening in this market somewhere, that fans aren't able to go to both and that money is being taken out of the market?
I think that's definitely the case, but I think there's so much more to it than just to look at the live music industry, but because like we are coming from a pandemic, like we are struggling still with like electricity prices, then we have like wars where people are like just not sure what is happening at the moment. So I think it's not easy to say, okay, because like there are more shows happening than in the past. What is the case? That is like just because of that is hurting festivals. I think like over the last years, there was just like also, and that was before COVID already, such a huge amount of new festivals that like just were created and popped up. So I think like it's maybe a natural way of like, okay, some festivals not being there in the future, but other ones will be there again then. So I thought like, maybe I'm wrong, but I thought like the market was overplayed with festivals in general.
Yeah. Do you think that the market is still kind of oversaturated from COVID? When we talk about a touring boom and there's more festivals, is this still the kind of trickle down effect from COVID? What do you think, Paul?
I think so. I think we're still kind of emerging from it, especially in Germany. Germany seemed to be lagging behind, especially UK. UK, they sprinted out of the pandemic. They never looked back. They pretend it never happened. Germany, we were still wearing masks on trains, like quite late, weren't we? It's more in the mindset. And you can see that in the amount of, the drop in ticket sales, the amount of cancelled festivals and cancelled shows. There's been a lot in Germany, actually.
And you still see that because people are actually also in Germany buying tickets quite late.
Yeah.
Because they're still very, unsure of what is happening, maybe.
And I think we're starting to get back to a more defined calendar, how we remember it before. Festivals are going back in the slots that they used to be in. Showcase events is the same. And we're kind of getting used to that again now. But I think for those first months and years, I think the agents and the artists were just putting all their backlogged events and their new tours wherever they could go. Every venue was kind of full, and they couldn't care where they were putting them. So if that was in summer, it was in summer. That was just what was available. And I think what will happen now is that they'll just leave it like that if they feel like it worked. So these traditional kind of seasons of indoor touring, outdoor touring, in UK that's very defined. In the rest of Europe it's not quite as defined as UK, but maybe they'll just carry on like that and they won't care as much about where these shows go as long as there's demand for it. I'm not sure if everyone can afford tickets for everything. I don't think that's possible, but that's what we'll see more and more as we go along, whether what am I, Gen X? We're kind of falling off the edge of going to these events now, but it's a question of whether the Gen Z guys are coming through and taking our place. I don't think they are. If you look at Glastonbury Festival in 1997, the average, that was the last time I went there, the average age of a ticket buyer was about 27. This year, the age was 45. The average ticket buyer is 45 years old. And that kind of makes more sense of the Sunday headliners, you know, Guns N' Roses and these heritage acts, I guess.
And I also think, if I can add to that, is we, like these Gen Z, like they missed 2 years of like experiencing festivals itself, because like they didn't grow up with it, like the time when they should tried it, like they weren't just able. And then of course I have like own thoughts of, okay, are they not into camping that much because they grew up with Airbnb and like are used more to good sleeping conditions, I don't know. That is also why I see like the city festivals are doing quite well in comparisons to camping festivals. So yeah, could be an option as well.
So what we're saying is festivals have a lot more to worry about than just the touring boom. They also have to bring through a new generation as well and introduce them to festivals. I thought what you were saying, Paul, was really interesting about how historically kind of the summer was reserved for festivals and touring kind of took place outside of that, at least in the UK, maybe in Europe. Do you guys, like Flor, Julia, do you see that changing, or do you think, as Paul said, agents are just going to keep on booking throughout the year now that they can see that it's working and they can get the tickets?
Well, I think traditionally ticket sales for headline shows were down in the summer because people didn't really want to go to a venue to see a show, but they'd rather go outside to like go to the lake or a barbecue in the park or go to an open air or something like that. And I think it's still going to be like that in the future. I see that still like the best touring months are still like March and November. That's where the most tours happen, and like everybody's trying to get tour managers to work for them, you know, because everybody's really occupied during those months. So I think the touring boom is still happening in the spring and in the fall, because that's where like traditionally people are going to shows. Because I mean in January, like people rather stay at home and cuddle up than go outside while it's rainy or like snowy or something like that. So I think it's still going to be like that. Of course, like because everybody wanted to tour in the last couple of years, of course more tours were happening in the summer, but I think eventually it will go back to normal, to be honest.
Yeah. So this, if we are to say that the touring boom is hurting festivals, we think that it's maybe like a temporary issue at the moment.
Yeah, definitely, I think so.
I think that's also because of COVID in the 2 years that like so many artists who like put out albums couldn't play, right? So this is also like, I mean, like there was like right after COVID, there was like this period where you couldn't get any venues, like where like venues thought about, okay, doing double bookings per day, like just to get enough artists in the venues to tour. So I think that is also still a big factor that the summers over the last years were also like booked by headline shows.
Well, Michael Rapino last week said he thinks the boom will last for a decade, but I don't know what he meant by that. I don't know.
Say again? Oh, you can say it loud, but I just didn't understand it.
Yes, he did say that. I guess not every company.
I only read the headline, so I'm not sure.
If it is true that the touring boom is impacting festivals, what are the other repercussions that we might be seeing? So we've talked a lot about booking artists. We've talked about fans' money. What other impacts might it be having? I'm wondering if it's having an impact on staff or production available. Like, are tours taking some resources away from festivals, or is that not the case?
To be honest, I haven't seen that at all, but like all the people who work for Lollapalooza have been working for Lollapalooza like since the beginning, and it's like mostly the same people. Of course, sometimes positions change because people change their jobs, but yeah.
We didn't get staff for the Fred Again show after Lola because of Lollapalooza.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
So it could happen in both ways, though.
Yeah, so it's the other way around.
Yeah, there's a lot of stories. There's more stories about festivals really struggling because of the lack of staff. You know, security staff and bar staff, things like that, and crew. That seems to be a real problem still. And I think everyone was affected by that.
And also, like, because the costs in general just like have risen so much, like whether it be like staff, like to get staff, but staff which is so more expensive than it was in the past, which at one point is fair, of course, but like so many different kind of companies during the pandemic also like changed businesses. So like we don't have as many people as we had before COVID, like helping out for touring or festivals, but we have more shows. So that definitely, I see it sometimes is an issue. But so far we managed every show.
Yeah. Are there any solutions to that? Like I think we've talked about like the generational gap. Like the generational gap goes for staff as well. Like we need to be training, recruiting, introducing the new generation to festivals. Like there is that gap. How do we kind of deal with that? It's a huge question.
Yeah, it is. Like the first thing is like make it more interesting. Like then this one thing is like, okay, of course, the money. But yeah, that's like a really tricky question.
Yeah.
I don't have the perfect answer for that, to be honest.
No, I don't know. I have to say, I mean, I work with artists, so I don't really need trained staff. And I really like people who used to work in other industries. And for example, I have one artist host who's a doctor. And I think it's really handy to have her on site because someone on the festival always has a health issue and needs a doctor to be looked at. So she has a double position. So I really like having people work for me who usually have other jobs, because if you have someone who works at the hospital in the Notaufnahme, what's that in English again?
Emergency.
Yeah, then you know she's not going to be stressed at a festival when an artist freaks out because his favorite drink isn't there. So, like, I just take people from other industries.
And I think like it's always like, I mean, like the music industry itself is such an interesting industry. And I think there are so many young people who maybe like, as Julia said, like coming from a different background, but like giving them a perspective or showing them what they could do at the festival, like artist hosts, like you don't need to be trained for that per se. If you have like the right people that can show you how to make the job done, and then like they will grow over the years, right? So I think that was always the case. I mean, like I started as an artist host with Julia when she was still working at Melt Festival, as a stage manager afterwards. Like that was 8 years ago. So finding the right people who like really have a passion for the industry, I think like you always will find them.
Yeah. So now I'm going to ask you the question, the panel question directly, because I didn't want to ask it at the start. Do you think the touring boom is hurting festivals? In case you all said no, and then we'd have to end the panel there. But now I'm quite curious to know, like, what's your opinion of this question? Because Julia, I think you said earlier that maybe you didn't think that it was hurting festivals.
No, I really don't think it's hurting festivals in the long run because, like I said before, I think the touring boom is building up future headliners, and so I think it will be a good thing for us in the future. And I mean, we work really closely together with our touring department, and they sometimes help us to get artists. Like instead of doing a headline show, they might have the artist play at the festival instead. So I don't really think it's hurting the festivals. And I mean, with all the lineups that have been released for next year so far, I think that the A-listers are still interested in festivals, and I think the festival season looks quite good for next year. And I think in the long run, it can only be good for the industry as a whole, because I see like young people are more interested in music again. want to catch up on what they missed out during COVID, and they want to spend more money on tickets, like not on individual tickets, but general. They want to spend money on seeing music live. They want to see their favorite artists live and not only listen to them on TikTok or whatever. So I think it is a positive development in the long run.
Yeah. What do you guys think?
I'm not sure about this word hurting. It's too definite. I think definitely impacting, because that could include some positivity. But I know Volker Koopmans from FKP Scorpio, who own a lot of festivals in Europe, he said this time last year, he said he expected about only 20% of festivals to break even. So that leaves 80% that, what are they doing? You know, I'd like to know where they're at the moment. That 20% have probably got through it okay, the difficult years. They've all gone on sale for next year. They all seem to be doing well. I'm not sure where the other 80% are. I think it'd be interesting to find out what those guys think to that. So it's certainly impacting. So it's not just the live touring boom, but it seems also that some festivals might be hurting other festivals as well. You know, when they're fighting over headliners, audience share, media coverage, resources, staff, services. It's always been like that, but I just think that's harder than it's ever been since the pandemic. So hopefully those festivals adapt, survive, come up with new ideas, compete, whatever it takes to keep going. I'm sure some will be lost, but hopefully for good reason. They just decide themselves that everything's moved on and we can't compete like it is. And let's see if the market comes back around. I don't think costs will ever go down. I think this is it now. You know, it's about adapting to this and improving and finding new ways to work in this environment. We're not going to go back to how it was before the pandemic. No. But that could be a good thing in the long run.
Yeah, I'll make it quick. So I also would agree to both of them. I don't think that the touring is hurting festivals. I think it is challenging for festivals, but I think that is a good thing, to be challenged and maybe also think outside the box of what you did in the past and maybe do some things differently in the future. Whether it be okay, do everyone has to book the same A-list headliner? Of course, they are selling the tickets, but what can we do except that, whether it be on upcoming new stages, more diverse programming, doing the experience a bit more interesting for the crowds. These are all things that can be thought about now, because there is this situation where we are at the moment. We just had this really nice discussion last week about an artist that we wanted to have at the festival. Okay, what can we do for the artist to make his experience so interesting for him that is something that was not done at the festival before. So doing it a bit as a headline show, but on a festival. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. But maybe.
And we were so proud of ourselves because the idea was so good.
But yeah, so I think it's a challenge that can be very fruitful for the festivals in the future as well.
I think that's really interesting what you just said about kind of bringing the headline touring experience for the artist to festivals. Can you talk a bit about what your idea was to make the experience for the artist better?
To be honest, I don't want to, because I want to use it for 2025. But I can tell you another story from Melt Festival, actually. A former colleague of ours really wanted to have Radiohead on the festival years ago. Do you know that story?
Actually, no. I'm as curious as you are.
And we thought about how could we get them to play the festival, and then we were kind of okay, they're super environmentally friendly, 10, 15 years ago when no one was really watching out for that. And Melt Festival was one of the only festivals that had an eco program already, and we had actually solar panels installed on the festival side to make it more environmentally friendly. So he was okay, I'm gonna offer them a fee and also shares in the solar panels on the festival side. And I thought it was such a great idea to make them interested in playing the festivals. I mean, it didn't work out in the end, but I think that's really what makes artists go, that's an interesting idea, and to get the festival into their head, you know, and it might not work the first year, but it might work the second year or the third year or something like that. Flo, maybe you should try to book Radiohead again because, I mean, I'm sure they still remember the idea because it was such a unique idea, you know?
Yeah, and I think like also what like you said is very interesting, like to like get the artists to have a connection to the festival as well. Like, for example, we do that like on a smaller scale with like collectives or takeovers that we like say, okay, let's curate and design a stage together. So like they are not seeing a festival such as an event where they can make money out of it, but like take part of it. Of course, it's like something different for A-list headliners, but I think like also this is part of what makes a festival and the experience great for both the artists but also like the attendees.
And that could really prove to be an investment for the festival, right? Like what you did for Radiohead, they're always going to remember you. Hopefully they'll come back to the festival as well. So, yeah, do you think that's something like the artist experience is going to be something that festivals focus on more to make sure that they can secure those acts? Or has it just always been that way?
For us, it's always been that way because, I mean, I used to work for Melt Festival, and for Melt Festival, sorry, Flo, that I talk about your festival now.
That's totally
but
fine.
It was, like, back in the day, Melt Festival was always the underdog, and we could never pay the fees like the big
Which
festivals
still is
could
the
pay.
case.
Yeah, and so we had to be creative to get the big artists to play the festival. And, I mean, after a while, they came up to us, and it was probably not the artists we asked in the first place, but we always like try to find unique ideas like the Radiohead stories to get them to play the festival. And then like artists like Oasis or Lana Del Rey, also back then the Black Eyed Peas, and like all these kind of famous artists came and they were like, hey, we're gonna pay for half of our regular fee, but we really want to play the festival because we heard so many good things about it, you know? And they, like, these artists all came and played the festival, and I think it still benefits from that today. And of course from Flo's good booking skills. But it's like, I think a lot of festivals who are not as big as the major festivals have to become inventive to get artists to be interested to play there.
And is that the same for fans? Because let's say a fan does have a limited amount of money, we're going through a kind of economical crisis, and they have to choose between tours and festivals. Like, are you feeling more pressure than ever to make festivals must-attend events for fans?
Yeah, I would definitely say that. I mean, like a festival nowadays has to be a brand, and it's like just you can't just have the festival as an one-off event throughout the year, but like how can you like give the people who want to attend the festival more throughout the year? And that is whether it be like having collectors or like as we do it for Melt, for example, like have these resident artists who come every year, like where people also like can relate to and then make something out of it. But or doing like events throughout the whole year, like there's so much more out of it. I think like for every festival, not just for Melt, but also the major festivals, like to not make it just a one weekend event for the whole year.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, at Lollapalooza, we also try to make it as economically sustainable as possible, and also to give the artists, the fans, an experience outside of music, like with our green area or the Kidsapalooza, so whole families can attend with their kids and play with them there, and the kids can also learn about music. And also Fashion Palooza, we have like young designers there, and like, I think it's important that festivals are not just stages on a field anymore where music plays, but it's a whole new world you can enter for a weekend and be someone totally different, and like give away your worries at the entrance, and like maybe even dress up and stuff like that and be someone completely different. It's like a little vacation from yourself, I think.
Yeah, I think it's really nice. It's a great development that festivals have their own followings these days.
Yeah.
You know, they have their own loyal fans. When I was a kid, a long time ago, but I went to see a particular band. I didn't care what the festival was. If The Cure were headlining, I'd go. And that I couldn't believe it when festivals started to go on sale where they didn't even have any artists announced yet, and they were selling out. It's like, wow, that's unbelievable. So I like that as a development, but I think it's still the same when we're talking about the amount of money that people have to go to. If you're a big fan of a particular artist, if it's your favorite artist, you'll go to see their show. But if you like the artist, then you might think, I could go to see that artist, one artist, or I could go to that festival for similar money and see 10 artists I really like, plus a load of other stuff that I'll discover. And I'll be with all my friends there who are into all kinds of stuff. And I'll get to climb a thing, and I'll get to eat a thing. And there's a whole different social angle that a one-off concert probably doesn't do. So I don't think there's a uniform answer. I think it's very individualistic. I think it's case by case. I still think the vast majority of artists want to play festivals. So we're talking about a minuscule amount of artists at the very top, and there is a knockdown effect on that. But I think overall it might not be as negative as the theme sounds, but there are definitely issues that should be addressed.
You spoke there a little bit about fan experience and how that's really unique at festivals. But actually, I've kind of noticed a trend of venues trying to emulate that festival experience. Like, I was speaking to the O2 the other day, who have had their busiest ever year for residencies. And we were talking about the Madonna residency and how the O2's marketing department has tried to make her residency kind of a festival experience, because they've got her there for six consecutive nights, so they've got time to kind of build this world for Madonna fans. Like, do you guys in the festival world, are you like, not threatened, that's a very negative word, but are you aware of venues like trying to emulate the festival experience, and do you see this as kind of competition?
But I think what you said now, it's like something completely different. I mean, like, of course you have the venue, it's like putting money into like look and feel and stuff like that, but you still see one artist there. So I think like it's still completely different from what a festival can offer.
I have to say, I went to the Melanie Martinez show at Rorty Music Hall last night, and that was really the best show I've seen in years. And it was really a whole
amazing
new
venue.
world.
Amazing venue.
Yeah, it was all the
That's
venue.
in the audience.
No, but it was like a theater show or something like that. I was so hyped after the show. Like, I haven't seen anything like it in such a long time. And the fans were so nice to each other. Like, they gave each other compliments in the bathrooms and stuff like that. They were so cute. And I was just like, I want to have that artist at my festival. Like, I'd love to have her because she brings such nice fans, and I'd love to have that show. I mean, it's like, in the end, I still think even if a venue builds up like a whole new world, I mean, you can still have that at a festival, and it's still something totally different, because it's still just one artist or two artists if you have the support artist. And I mean, a festival is really a bargain for the fans, because instead of just having one or two artists, you get like 50 artists for maybe double the price than one single ticket, or maybe triple the price, but it's still such a bargain for fans. So I think it's a totally different experience, and you can't compare the two, to be honest.
Well, we see it in the K-pop world, don't we? That's like a little touring world of its own that goes from city to city and creates this whole ecosystem around it. That's fantastic to be involved in. I do have an example as well. I was talking to my friend in Helsinki. They have 2 shows with Metallica next summer at the Olympic Stadium on the Friday and the Sunday. And on the Saturday, they put in a whole day of Metallica-related activity that they're letting happen. They're bringing in exhibitions and different events, all based around Metallica. So the whole weekend becomes Metallica-orientated, the whole city. So that's something that will be good, I think.
It's nice to think that the festival world and the touring world can, rather than compete, they can complement each other and they can borrow ideas and work together. That's what I'm kind of sensing, is that actually the touring boom isn't hurting festivals. It's an oversaturated market generally, but we can borrow things. I just want to do a check to see if there's any questions from the audience. No, don't be shy. Okay, let's talk about 2024. What kind of challenges and opportunities are you seeing from, you're obviously releasing the lineup for next year now. How has it been booking the lineup for 2024?
I mean, I can just speak for Melt Festival, which, because of the change of the date that I mentioned earlier, it actually worked quite well. I mean, like, we announced our lineup last week, the first drop with, I think, 29 names, and have a very, very great mixture of like well-known artists next to upcoming artists. But actually, our ticket sales are 30% up from last year already. So I can't, like in this case, I can't say like that touring's hurting us. So yeah, we're basically like working on finalizing the lineup at the moment, and looking to a very promising Melt Festival.
And of the challenges we've kind of talked about with staff, those kinds of things, are you still seeing them? Do you anticipate you'll see them next year still, or do you think?
We are still looking very positive on that note.
Yeah. Yeah. What about you, Julia? How's 2024 looking?
We also have a very positive outlook. Like, we haven't even thought about staff yet, to be honest. Yeah. It's still a little bit early, and we haven't announced anything yet, so I can't say anything about the program yet. But I'm very proud of Flo's program, because he booked the Sugar Babes.
The Sugar Babes at Melt.
Yep, they're coming back.
I love them. Can I come?
Original lineup.
Yeah, actually, it's a bit like the same like Nelly Furtado at the moment. All these like 2000 Y2K acts are having a revival.
Yeah.
They fit actually very well to the electronic music scene. I mean, Sugar Babes just did a Boiler Room, I think, a month ago in London. Yeah. So that was actually the idea behind that. And I mean, like, we always had it at Melt Festival, right? I mean, with Kylie Minogue, for example, playing at the festival next to artists like Skepta or James Blake that are also both attending next year. So, yeah.
And are exclusives something you're aiming for with booking festivals these days? You spoke about Nelly Furtado at the Australian festival. That was an exclusive. That was something fans could not get elsewhere. Is that something that you're interested in when you're booking? Yeah,
definitely. I mean, like, it's also like, from what I said before, like, making a festival interesting is, of course, one huge point is because of the lineup, and having these exclusivities definitely help a festival to sell the tickets, because you're not just like doing the same lineup as any other festival. So yeah, definitely. I mean, like, sometimes, of course, you don't get the artists that you would love to book at the festival, but that is also the case when they are like touring and have these exclusivities. But in Germany in general, I'd say we have a very good exchange with other festivals within the Live Nation cosmos, but also with like the other festivals. And talk about important artists that like maybe would benefit both festivals. That doesn't is an issue.
That's something I wondered about, because I remember during the pandemic there was a lot of discussions about like cross-industry like collaboration, but then kind of as the pandemic petered out, people were talking about, oh, that's all gone, we're back to being competitive. But it sounds like there is, like, you're working together still.
Yes and no.
Yeah.
Depends.
You don't have to name any names.
No.
Is there anything else new for next year, kind of with your festivals, or are you seeing new trends, something else you're focusing on?
I mean, especially in electronic music, like that trance music, like with a lot of German artists, and that also I'm speaking a lot about COVID and pandemic today, but having all these local upcoming electronic artists from Berlin, they got that huge hype that is like going abroad Germany now since 1-2 years now. Like we actually built that new stage for them right when we started after the pandemic. Acts like Southstar, Marlon Hofstadt, Malugi, DJ Heartstring, all of them are like really internationally great artists at the moment, and like we built this stage right for them, which is like a auto scooter stage, bumper car stage that was like our hidden gem over the last 2 years. So we always like to rethink like areas at the festival side and what we could do differently and see how it works. If it doesn't work out, we change it. But yeah, there'll definitely be some new things that I don't want to tell yet.
No exclusives.
So you have to come to the festival.
Good sell, good sell.
I think more, of course I'll say this, but I think based on the conversations I've had over the last 6 months with this new job I've been doing of online concert streaming, I think more artists and organisers will start to see the benefits of some online streaming, not as a replacement to anything they're doing, but as a way to supplement their promotion, especially if they have an album release. Earlier I mentioned that they're using this as a tool if they can't tour a particular market. But I think more and more they're building it into their plans for their next album releases and touring schedule. You know, their fans will go to a venue and watch the show. They'll also buy a ticket for the stream and they'll watch it on demand later. We've got evidence of that. Since the pandemic, there's just a growing amount of people. There's a whole sector of society that don't go to concerts. They can't, or they won't, for whatever reason. It's not just the cost. It's all reasons that existed before but were ignored. And we're seeing that with the growth of people buying tickets for online shows as well. After the pandemic, there was a real lull when you mentioned live streaming, because we had so much of it during the pandemic, but it was pretty poor quality. It was a means to an end, and it did a good job, but we were sick of it. We wanted to get back to physical events. But it was interesting that so many promoters set up their own streaming platforms, and they're just dormant at the moment because they had to focus on getting back to their festivals and their touring. But they've all said to me that once they've got that balanced, they'll bring back their platforms and they'll look to do some live streaming as well. So as long as there's some strategy behind it and the quality is really good and it's affordable and all the stakeholders are on board, then this is going to be a really useful thing in future. It's obvious something is going to exist like this in future. It might not be a stream, but it'll be some virtual reality, augmented reality thing that probably we can't imagine, but in 5 years it'll be there. So I've been really interested to look at that point of view. It's been a great education for me. So I think that'll become more and more of a thing to talk about as well. I just want to mention, as an example, Wacken Festival, one of the great metal festivals, had a big problem this summer. The first day was terrible weather. I mean, so unlucky, but they had a terrible weather. They had to close the site. Thousands of people didn't get to the festival site, but they had it live streamed. Yeah. So not as good as being there, of course, but at least they could direct them somewhere and go, please, for free, go and watch the stream and you'll get some element. And the good news from all that is the day they went on sale for next year, they sold out immediately. Yeah. So no harm done. But a good example of where it came in really useful.
Yeah, a great solution. Yeah, that's excellent. We've run out of time. So I've got time for one quick question if anyone has one. Otherwise, we'll leave it there. Nope. Okay, well, thank you so much for joining me on stage today. It was really interesting to get your thoughts, and thank you to everyone who showed up. Round of applause for our panelists.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.